time.
Right. So joining VMware, now you got to teach a company how to crawl, walk, run software-defined networking because they know software-defined everything else. So maybe just you joined and you were an SVP or EVP. I mean, you were.
Listen. You know, it's funny when I
Yeah.
joined. When I joined, I was a senior director. I didn't know what that
Oh,
was.
you
Right?
were.
Hey,
Oh.
so it's funny. So when when they didn't, I didn't even know what that was. They're like, "We're going to give you a senior director title." I'm like, "Fine with me." Like I didn't even know to argue for a.
Wow.
I had no idea to argue for a larger title. Like I'd never worked in a big company in my entire life. Never. And I was CTO for the networking and security business unit, which nobody really even knew what that meant.
So were you appointed, I guess, Steve Herrod at the time, or who were you?
No. I think Raghu.
Oh, Raghu. Well, you were
Raghu
appointed.
he was like the interim head, the
Got
interim
it.
GM.
Yeah.
And then my CEO, Steve Mullaney, became the GM, and I reported to him.
Got it.
And so I focus on the stuff I'd been doing before, which is go-to-market and strategy. But in that time, they promoted me not just to VP, but to SVP, but also they made me a fellow. So I think there was 4 fellows in the entire company, right?
So yeah, they quickly realized like, well, hey, haha, we just got this for peanuts, by the way, and because I think so. And then this guy's pretty amazing. Okay, that's amazing they did that.
So within about a year, my CEO spun out and decided, he was going to basically retire. And so I became the GM. And so I ran the business unit, and it was still pretty immature when I took it. Like I think Steve had built the architecture and the foundation, but hadn't brought it to scale. And so, when I left, it was a $600 million run rate business unit. And I think we had 1,200 people, and we were global, and we'd opened up offices everywhere. We overlaid in a 4,000 person sales team, and it was the whole thing. And then I was in an SVP and whatever. But I honestly joined as kind of this, they didn't know how to title me or think of me. But I will say this, and for anybody listening that is thinking about or if in the future you get acquired by a big company, I've had a lot of great experiences in my life, a lot, the PhD at Stanford, like being an investor, doing 2 startups. I did one while I was doing a PhD, working for the intelligence community. The most I've ever learned in a period of time was when I was at VMware, full stop. I've learned the most about pretty much anything in a short period of time was those 3 years. And part of it is because we're growing a company from, relatively low bookings to a lot of bookings and building out the company. But also it's just like, there's so many people that have seen so much, and you have access to all of them, and you don't have to get in a car or set up a meeting or whatever. They're all there, and you're forced to work with them. So that was an unbelievable experience. It was hard, but it was unbelievable.
And so did you see your role as more of an evangelist, more of a business operator, salesperson, engineering leader? What was
I was GM, and I had P&L, so it was all the above. If it wasn't for Raghu and Pat was the CEO at the time. Raghu ran basically the vSphere side of the business. He basically ran all core product, and them really trusting us and giving us autonomy. None of it would have worked, right? Because they didn't know how to sell into networking at the time, and very few companies can do that because it's expensive. But they did it, to their credit. And so we joined a company where we had, the trust of leadership, which is so huge, and we had budget and we had autonomy to go after a new buyer. And with that, we were able to build, a team. And then we had cooperation. Actually, Carl Eschenbach, who's now at Sequoia, so one of my favorite people on the planet, was, COO and running sales at the time. We had cooperation of the sales team to do the go-to-market. And so, we got to set our own internal culture. We were kind of the pirate ship, right? For the NSBU. And we played on that a little bit as far as kind of like how we ran things. I mean, even silly stuff like, like kind of events we threw and whatever, but like, the cadence of what we ran. But, all with like full cooperation from the mothership. I'll say with those 2 ingredients, acquisitions can be wonderful things. But you need both. You really need both.
Yeah, I 100% relate. When I joined MuleSoft in 2012, it was pretty much didn't have anything around APIs. And I was given all this autonomy by Greg, the CEO, to basically conceptualize, create the first product suite that became API Hub, which was supposed to be the GitHub or the next generation marketplace of APIs back then. And then it evolved into like hiring people and then like creating this momentum in the company from a product and go-to-market perspective. And then I kind of felt like, okay, after 3-4 years, I felt like, okay, my job's kind of done. It's a little less interesting, but I've had all this autonomy. I was able to like kind of make my mark, and I'm wondering how much of that do you relate to? Like, okay, VMware now has crawled. They're walking. They're about to run. My job has been done. Do you kind of relate to that kind of a thing, or?
Good question. I just think that, like, these things go in stages, and then you just decide whether you want to be part of that next stage or not. And I think in general, companies always go, I think all companies kind of go through, there's the product stage, there's the go-to-market stage, and there's the operations stage, right? The product is finding product market fit. It has to be run by like somebody in the company has to be the product strategist or understand the technologies and integration. Then you go to the go-to-market phase, which is like, how do you do repeatable sales? Like, what does that even mean, right? Like, and how do you do it in a way that like you can actually build like a working sales pipeline and funnel and whatever. And then the operations phase is, okay, so how do you operationalize all of this so you can actually like, improve unit economics and, improve margins and like scale arbitrarily, et cetera. And I've been through all of those phases. Now, the work is not, I think the work is never really done, because if you actually look at the work that we did, it's already legacy work, right? That was a 10-year journey. We created a multi-billion-dollar product line. I think technology is like sharks, right? Like if you stop swimming, you die. And so, but, listen, I've been doing it for 11 years. I've been traveling 80%. And even though like I get so passionate about these things that I work on, like, 10 years, I felt like, I've really kind of done it. I felt like I'd done right for VMware. I built a big business for them. So like, I'd kind of checked that box. And so it was a pretty natural point for me to decide what the next thing to do was. And, and so after being there for 4 years and getting into business, and by the way, like any sort of like incentive or kind of golden handcuff was only 2 years. VMware was actually great the way that they treated me. So it was far beyond that. And I think it was the right time. And listen, the business continued to do very well. So I think what we put in place was the right architecture.
Yeah, that's definitely the sense I got, that you truly had this love for furthering software-defined networking in the world, and VMware, that having that platform, you were truly bought into it. It was pretty inspiring to see.